The Matter standard is the newest and most talked about standard for smart homes. Its intention is to make it easy for you to build an effective and reliable smart home. However, I have 7 devices in my home right now with Matter, and it is not going well. When you think about a smart product, there are 3 aspects to it. The first is how the device is set up. Second is the connections you can make with it. And third is how the device performs over time. So today I'm going to show you how the Matter standard is working within all 3 of those aspects. I'll make sure you understand what parts are working, what parts are not, and where you can and can't begin to use this new standard. Let's start with that first aspect, which is how the standard allows you to set up products. It's quite different from older smart home products using other standards. So far, I have this TP-Link Tapo Smart Plug, 2 Miros Smart Plugs, this 2-pack of A19 bulbs from Linkkind, and this Matter Dev Kit from Third Reality that really is a nightlight. I also have the Aqara M2 hub set up as a Matter bridge. Now when I plug in any of these devices, the Matter device uses Bluetooth to signal to my phone that it's ready for setup. I get a pop-up on my Android phone that tells me to scan the QR code sitting on my device and/or in the manual. After you scan the code, you pick an application to drop the product into. The list you get here is based on the apps you have that are Matter certified. After choosing the app, the setup process really just happens. You might have to put in your Wi-Fi credentials, but after that, you really just sit and wait for the process to finish. At least, that's how it's supposed to go. Hello Automators, thanks for tuning in again. I'm Brian from Automate Your Life, and my whole purpose here on the channel is to save you time in your life with technology. And sometimes the technology is not ready. With Matter, the time is close and you will see positive things about the standard today. But right now, the problems start as soon as you attempt setup. Sadly, what I have experienced with all of these devices is that all of them failed on the first attempt at setup. And even when I retry the setup process by physically resetting the device, I find myself failing more than I'm succeeding. I have experienced basic failures where the setup process tells me that the device couldn't be connected, but I've also experienced failures that are incredibly complex and are based on the fact that the infrastructure just isn't in place for Matter yet. The best example of this, it came during setup of a Linkkind bulb. It's a Matter over Wi-Fi bulb, and its list of applications for initial setup includes the manufacturer's app. It's called AI Dot. When I chose that application during setup, it looked like everything was working. The light bulb joined my Wi-Fi network, and the process said it was successful. But the bulb never showed up in the app. And I've tried multiple times since, but it never shows. What's the reason? Well, the AI Dot isn't Matter certified yet, so it shouldn't show up in the list of options. But I had the same problem with TP-Link's Tapo app too, when using that plug. But it's not just the apps from the manufacturer. On my phone today, I have Google Home, SmartThings, Smart Life, and Home Assistant that I can pick from. And I can also start the process in Amazon and Apple's respective smart home apps. I'm giving you my failure rates for getting products set up in all of those apps. These are failure rates out of 10 setup attempts per app. The sad truth is I could go on and on about all these random problems I had during setup. There were many different reasons that things failed, and the funny thing was I could get a product to work in one moment and then have it completely fail the next. That's the kind of experience we used to have with early versions of smart Wi-Fi products, and this is supposed to be the newest standard. But what's worse is some of the things are working as intended and are terrible. Amazon isn't a choice on my Android phone when that setup screen pops up, so I have to go into their app and go through the add device process. That actually makes me highly successful with Amazon, but it's not just an instant pop-up like other apps. For example, Samsung SmartThings, when I'm sitting in that app and I plug in a device, I get a pop-up. It doesn't work that way in the Smart Life app, and in fact, that app has a 100% failure rate because anything I've brought in has incorrectly come in as a bulb, except the Linkine bulb, which doesn't come in at all. Now, Apple doesn't pop up anything at all, and you have to go into the Home app and add an accessory just like you always have. So they're a lot like Amazon. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that it's inconsistent in its implementation, and it is inconsistent in terms of success. Every app is failing too often in a process that I have no control over as a consumer. And honestly, I became angry as I went through all of these setup attempts, because worse than having failures occur is having failures occur when they take 10 minutes to set up a simple Wi-Fi bulb or plug that I could have done in any manufacturer's app yesterday in about 10 seconds. That's what keeps happening to me. I end up waiting for what feels like an eternity for the process to fail, and in some cases the apps will never come back and tell me that the process has actually failed. Now, I don't want you to think that this is the only way Matter Setup will go right now, because there are some people saying they're loving these products and they're having nothing but success. But it's this randomness of success that's actually the most concerning. Now, the good news is, I did eventually get everything over here set up and connected. In most cases, I found that Google, Amazon, and Apple were really good apps to choose during setup. They have high success rates and are already really good at bringing in lots of different types of devices. They also have a really good method for managing connections to other applications, which is our second aspect of any smart product. Today, if you try to put a non-Matter smart plug into your home, you will have to first set it up in the manufacturer's app, then go and add it to Google, Amazon, Apple, Samsung, or other apps. You are basically creating links at a service level. So if you did have multiple Miros smart plugs in your home and you connect Miros to SmartThings, all of those devices will come in to Samsung's app. The problem with that system shows up when you then connect SmartThings into Google Home and or Amazon. That's because you can end up with duplicate devices if you have already connected Miros to those Google and Amazon apps as well. But with a Matter device, you can manage connections from any app your device is connected to. Each Matter certified app can link a Matter device to other apps, and no one app manages the whole device for you. So it's more of a spider web when we draw it out. In theory, this adds redundancy to managing devices, but also gives users the flexibility of choice and eliminates duplicate devices. Here's how the process works. After initial device setup in any of the certified apps, you will go into the device's settings. I'm showing you how it looks in the Google Home app because it's actually one of the nicest layouts. But here you will find an option to start a pairing process or link the device to another app or service. With Google Home, they call it Link Apps and Services, and from there I get a pop-up that looks a lot like the initial setup on my phone, because it includes all of the different apps that I had before. I can tap into any of those and begin the process of linking the device with that other application. But when your application is not listed, you have two additional options. The first is to use a pairing code, and the second is to create a QR code. Both of those are really the same thing. It's just whether you were going to type in the number in the second app you're about to use, or whether you want to scan in that app. As you make a selection on this page, it puts the device into a pairing mode again, and then it's a very similar process of just waiting forever for the app to finish its setup. You can name the device at the end of this process, and the name can be the same or different between apps. If it's successful, you can go on linking to other applications, and if it's not successful, you can try again. But once you have made some successful connections, you will see a list of linked apps and services. Plus, in most cases, you will see the name of each service. At any time, if you don't want your device to be linked to another app, you can hit the little X and it will revoke permission for that system to speak to your Matter device. At least, that's how it's supposed to work. The linking process is genius in a lot of ways. I loved rolling through adding this Miros plug to both Apple HomeKit and the Smart Life app in minutes without leaving the Google Home app. It didn't work right, but it felt good. I did similar things with all of these products, but as I went to try this in other applications, I ran into discrepancies for how this was managed. All of the apps will provide you either a numeric or a QR code for pairing, and sometimes both. Some of them will provide a list of apps you can link your Matter device to, but not all. Crazier yet is that depending on the operating system of the app, you might get different options for linking. Some of them call it sharing, some of them call it pairing, some of them call it linking, and some of them just don't have the darn options. Some of them keep a list and some of them don't. Some of them manage the revoking options and some of them show nothing there. And the biggest problem again is how often these products fail to come into the second app. With SmartThings, I successfully linked a product exactly one time and failed countless others. With Amazon, it fails every single time as it tells me I need a new code, even when I have a new code. With Smart Life, it brings in devices as bulbs no matter what they are. The bright spots here are that Google and Apple seem to succeed almost every time in receiving that link from another application. They're not perfect, but are heads and tails above everyone else. They also provide really clear management of the links you've created. But there are two other problems that I experienced that I have to tell you about because they are serious trouble. Now, I was working on the TP-Link Tapple plug and I was trying to connect it to multiple applications. It kept failing, so I thought I'd try another approach. I was in the Google Home app and I went to add a device as if I was adding an older device. Then Google did its normal search through anything nearby and it found 10 different Matter devices. They didn't have different names and they all just said Matter device. And they were all instances of that TP-Link plug having tried to pair. Now, I can't explain exactly why this was happening, but it felt similar to a memory leak in programming. It was never closing all of these attempts to pair, even though it was failing. But the second serious problem is related to those duplicate devices that we're supposed to be solving with this. The fact that you can put a different name into each app for a Matter device is really great, but it also means that you will have to manage those names individually in each app. So if you move a smart plug in the future, you might have to rename it 4 times. Aside from that, I still managed to experience duplicate devices. When I put the Miros smart plug into SmartThings, it shared the plug with Amazon through the normal linking method. Now, because I'd managed to put the Miros plug in Amazon's app already, I ended up with a duplicate. And if the same thing was to happen with a couple more apps, I would end up with quintuplets or worse. So linking is this dichotomy. It's interesting and also a total disaster. But living with your Matter devices should be fairly easy. The industry has known how to put Wi-Fi products on your Wi-Fi network for years, right? Wrong. So let's move on to living with Matter devices, the third aspect. Living with a Matter device really should be the same as any of your existing smart home products with a few minor differences. These products work the same in terms of automations and control as others of the same type. Plugs have an on and an off, and bulbs have temperature, color, and brightness. Plus, the normal automation options for these types of devices are available. It's all as expected, and they're actually really great because they are being controlled locally. That local control has meant almost immediate response in all of the apps, and it's also meant that when the internet was out, I could still control these products as long as the app allowed that. But despite the local control positives, living with these devices has not been a picnic. So we've been living with, those Wi-Fi based smart devices in our home for what feels like forever. And people tell me all the time that they personally struggle with setup and reliability with those kinds of products. But I've worked through most of the issues in my own home, and I rarely have device disconnections. I just don't have Wi-Fi device issues. So my expectation, once a Matter device was on my network, was that it would be rock solid and that I wouldn't have to worry about it again. That's not what I've experienced, as every single one of these devices has disconnected multiple times. And worse yet, I don't seem to be able to bring them back once they do. I have to delete and repair them all over again. So I've taken them out here, honestly, half of them won't come back. Plus, it's not always a disconnection from my Wi-Fi, as I've found many devices disconnected from a single app while it's still working on another. And when I do disconnect a device from power like this, or take it offline manually, all of the devices take a really long time to come back if they ever do. It's all over the place again, and for the third time, I'm telling you that inconsistency is the experience with Matter today. Now, we've gone through a ton, and I've only mentioned the Aqara M2 hub sitting here once, and it's actually the most interesting device I'm covering in today's video because it's a Matter bridge. Now, a Matter bridge is really just a fancy name for hub. It connects a number of devices into Matter, and that's what gives it the name Matter Bridge. The nice thing about a Matter bridge like this is that it's bringing in your older smart home devices that weren't originally created with Matter compatibility. It's bringing them into the standard. In this case with Aqara, it's a number of their Zigbee devices. How this works today is you have a bunch of devices connected to your Aqara M2 hub. You do that connection through Aqara's normal setup process for those devices. I connected a smart plug, a curtain driver, and an air quality sensor. Plus, I created an IR device on this hub. I could have added more, and in fact, Aqara has a large list of devices that will work with this bridge method. Now, once you have all of your devices set up and connected to the Aqara M2 hub, it's time to do the Matter setup. And what you'll find is that in the settings for your M2 hub today, you'll have an option to bind to Matter. That creates a Matter QR code and a Matter numeric code, just like any other Matter device that we've talked about today. Then you can take that over to your app of choice, and it's a very similar setup process. But this one actually works. And I think that's more or less because I've only been able to use it with Apple HomeKit. If you'll remember earlier in the video, I told you that Apple was highly successful for setup of Matter devices, and this Matter Bridge is no exception. What was great is that the curtain and the smart plug came right in and were controllable in that perfect way that we've come to expect between Apple and Aqara. It was obviously being done locally, and therefore the control was fast and accurate. However, the other two devices didn't come into HomeKit and weren't controllable. At that point, I could use the regular integration method between Aqara and Apple, but the first time I did this, it actually created duplicate devices, and that's a duplicate connection method as well. So it's kind of extra painful. Still, I was extremely impressed with both Aqara and Apple with how the performance went, and I didn't experience disconnections or any of the other problems that I've had with other Matter devices to date. So kudos to both of these companies for getting that one right. But there is this big other problem. As of today, Matter bridges are not supported in any of the apps except Apple HomeKit. Google, Amazon, and Samsung are not saying when they will bring in Matter bridge compatibility. So this could be a long wait, and Aqara still needs to give the whole list of their devices this option because they're not fully done testing today. To this point in the video, we've actually only talked about Wi-Fi connectivity when it comes to Matter. That's important to consider, and I have seen the Thread devices thus far behave and perform better, but only in a limited scope. The fact is that really, Matter over Thread today comes down to you wanting to use Eve's 3 Matter over Thread products with Google Home or Samsung SmartThings. Those are nice new options, but it doesn't give me enough testing opportunities to say how this is really working. From here, I can tell you it's going a little better, but those are the only options you'll gain from Matter over Thread today, period, across the whole industry. Now, there's been a lot of complaining in today's video, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of good here. Today, I just don't think that the Matter standard is really ready for you to start implementing, and I will continue to test things like Matter over Thread and additional products that come in. But this is all part of the experience we are going to have this year in the smart home industry, and I explained why and for how long this will happen to us in the video that's up on screen now. It's all the trends and it's all the things you can expect from the smart home industry in 2023, and it'll make sure you're ready to build your home in the right way throughout this entire year. So check that out. Otherwise, thanks for watching today, and of course, don't hate, automate.